I want you to do this one because you're a poet. Go to page 348.
Oh no, what am I gonna find here?
Nothing. Just do it in your best. I'm really feeling this poem voice.
It was in that moment that for the first time in her life, Corvina opened her journal and uncapped her pen, and began to let the thoughts flow. The wind in the walls, echo secrets and sins, whisper to me, urging me to listen. And I try, fail, not hearing the death that is coming.
Oh man, I got chills. That's so macabre. Even the bravest bastard would be chilled by such a morbid and macabre poem.
It was so grotesque, like a gargoyle, which is a thing that is grotesque and sits on a roof.
I think there were motifs in there that would allude to death, even foreshadow it.
I think it correlates with the interactions between art and history. if you think about it.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the English Club podcast. I'm Andrew.
And my name is Vad Deverell.
And today we have a very, very exciting and special episode for you. Today we are talking about a book that was not submitted to us, but actually I specifically asked for. RuNyx's Gothikana. Now, a little bit of the backstory for this is every other episode, Joshua will pick a book and then I'll pick a book. So this was my turn, and Joshua sends me this like stupid TikTok about a gothic romance book, and I didn't even watch it. But something about the concept of a gothic dark academia romance was so interesting to me, as well as the question of whether or not, RuNyx, you are a human being. So for the interest of time and for the interest of us getting a deeper understanding of this book, we have split this book in half. I have read chapters 16 through the end, and Joshua has read chapters 1 through 15. We did not talk to each other about what went down. We didn't look at any other part. And we haven't even done our dramatic readings, which we usually do as a warm-up. So we are going completely blind or half blind into Gothikana by RuNyx.
Well, Andy, I can tell you one thing. Vad Deverell's not a human. He's the devil. Get it? Because my last name sounds like devil. That's just a little sexy foreshadowing for you, Andy. Do you mind if I call you Andy?
Hey, Vad, do you know what Verenmore is an anagram of?
Well, I know that school like I know. Vad Deverell legally can't complete that sentence. Why don't you tell me, Andy?
I think our listeners are smart enough to understand what the reference is there, but it took me actually a very long time to realize. I was actually ashamed of myself when I noticed. I thought it was some weird English illusion. Anyways, so we are going to start out, and this is not a bit, this is a completely true story. I haven't even read the back of the book. I didn't look at the Amazon description. I started at chapter 16. I ended at the end. I've read nothing else. So live on camera right now, to get us an idea of what goes on in Gothikana, a novel, I am going to read the back of the book. An unusual girl, an enigmatic man, an ancient castle. What could go wrong? An outcast her entire life, Corvina Clemm is left adrift after losing her mother. When she receives the admission letter from the mysterious University of Verenmore, she accepts it as a sign from the universe. The last thing she expects, though, is an olden, secluded castle on top of a mountain, riddled with secrets, deceit, and death. An enigma his entire life, Vad Deverell likes being a closed book, but knowing exactly everything that happens in the university. A part-time professor working on his thesis, Vad has been around long enough to know the dangers the castle possesses. And he knows the moment his paths cross with Corvina, she's dangerous to everything that he is. They shouldn't have caught each other's eye. They cannot be. But a chill-inducing century-old mystery forces them to collide. People have disappeared every 5 years for over 100 years, and Corvina is getting clues to unraveling it all, and Vad needs to keep an eye on her. And so begins a tale of the mystique, the morbid, the macabre, and a deep love that blossoms in the unlikeliest of places.
Well, Andy, I gotta hand it to you. Sounds mighty sexy.
Yeah, I actually, I was really taken aback. I start right on chapter 16, and I knew it was a romance, but I thought it would be like a fade to black romance. And then they have like a very, very graphic sex scene in capital T, capital V, the vault. Joshua, I wanted to ask you, do you know anything about like the vault? Because it made it sound like it was a secret, and then randomly like characters would make a reference to it. Does that ring a bell to you? It was like a dungeon.
So shooing Vad Deverell out of the room
with a desexing stick.
He's blowing a kiss at me as he leaves. I'm so uncomfortable. Yeah, no, I have no idea what that is.
Really?
It may have been mentioned like one time, but it would not be the only time in the book that like a proper noun is dropped without explanation.
Okay, I just, it made it sound like it was a big deal. Like Corvina creeps down into this newly opened vault, and then there's a piano that was in her tower. So like, I think the dorms are like towers. Is it like Hogwarts houses?
Wait, the piano was in the vault? How did it get into the vault?
It was moved.
Okay, well, there's also a piano in the woods.
There's a piano in the woods?
Yeah.
Wait, maybe that was the piano that, okay. So she could hear it from her tower.
Well, there is a piano in the tower in the first half.
So there's 3 pianos. No, there's 2 pianos. One was moved.
I was never clear on if the one in the vault, the one in the tower was the same as the one in the woods, or if they were 2 different pianos. So.
Oh my God.
Oh, sorry. Vad just slid a note under my door here. Oh, gross. It has, like, lipstick on it. Hold on. It says, "Did you forget to do the part of the intro where you explain the premise of the podcast?"
Sorry, I got so excited. I was thinking of all the different things that we could talk about. We look at books that the internet has written off as bad, and we give them a fair shake. Joshua and I are both critique partners in real life, and we know the value of looking at a book for what it is and then making suggestions, not about what we think would be quality, but by furthering the mission that a book sets out to fulfill.
And, personally, I feel like I have a bit better of a perspective on this one because one of the principal love interests, Vad Deverell, is a grad student and graduate teaching assistant, as am I. So I was, I had some remarks on his conduct that I'm excited to get into.
Yeah, so now that we know that there are 2 pianos, one in the woods, one in the tower, and one of those was moved into the dungeon, let's kind of back up a little bit. Joshua, how about you tell me your first impression of Corvina Clemm?
So the first thing I noticed was that, and the book explains this in case you didn't pick up on it, is that her name is very subtly a reference to Edgar Allan Poe. Her name, Corvina, means raven, and Clemm was the last name of Poe's. I forget if it was actually his wife or just his fiancée, but anyway, this cousin that he was romantically involved with. And I thought that was funny because there's a part in the first half, I think it's actually in the classroom the first time she meets Vad, where Vad Deverell says, "Corvina and Clemm, your parents must have been big fans of Edgar Allan Poe." And I was like, that doesn't make sense because you don't choose your child's last name. That's like fourth wall breaking in a place where it doesn't work.
Maybe she got her own last name. You can change your last name.
No, her mom's last name is also Clemm.
Oh, well, yeah, it's just whatever.
It just patently doesn't make sense in world. So my first impression of her, though, like, other than the name thing, is that she's kind of a tabula rasa, and, like, even diegetically so. We learn really early on that she's lived this very isolated life in a cabin outside of a town. Her mom raised her, but at some point her mom was taken to a mental institution, and so she just took care of herself from then on. As a child, she didn't go into town much because she was afraid that people would notice that she wasn't at school and they would come and like arrest her mom and stuff. So she's literally just like nothing. She's like a nobody person. And she herself seems somewhat aware of this fact.
It made it sound like her admission process into Verenmore University was a little bit weird. Do you remember that scene?
Yeah, it's not really a scene so much as it is like she just gets a letter one day, and it is kind of like Hogwarts.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't know, I mean, she knows it came from the school, but she doesn't know how they found out about her or anything like that, or why they picked her, because she's poor, she's rural, she has no history and no name, basically. So it kind of leads you to think that like there's magic going on at this school. But then at the same time, she's talking about the town that her cottage in the woods is near, and it sounds like a very modern town. So the world building is like a little bit shaky. Like it's unclear in ways that they don't feel intentional. They feel disarming.
So before I tell you a little bit more about her admission process, I have to ask you, what color are Corvina Clemm's eyes?
Oh my god, dude. You wouldn't believe how purple they are. They're so purple that one of her friends, ? Just calls her purple.
Are they naturally purple?
It ties into like the prophecy or something.
Oh yeah, that which was foretold.
Yeah, by definition, a prophecy is that which has been foretold. Everyone knows this.
Everyone knows that. Okay, so that was an interesting little bit, and I don't know that this might be your first spoiler for me, is that Vad Deverell, who we will talk about very, very soon, when he was growing up, received a prophecy to follow the purple eyes.
Yep, that's in the first half too.
So he engineered Corvina's admittance into Verenmore.
Wait, he made it happen?
Yes.
That doesn't make any sense. The whole first half he's complaining about her being there.
I guess he was playing hard to get, because what he did was, and I think he might have seen like a picture of Corvina's mom, Celeste, ? And that is what prompted him to like cheat Corvina into admission into Verenmore, which, as a master student and a teacher, I wonder if that's also not a very, very weird breach of protocol to do.
Not only is that an extremely bizarre breach of protocol, but I already had made a note in my critiques document about how Vad does not make for a convincing graduate student, in part because of how much power he has in the department. Like, as a graduate student myself, if the department told me to, I don't know, like, go to a rival school's English building and, like, set it on fire, I don't know that I would have the leverage to refuse that request. So the idea that he was able to, like, engineer the admission of a student that the school was otherwise not going to admit is, like, nonsense to me.
Oh, Joshua. The difference is, my friend, does your family own the University of St. Balasar for generations?
Wait. His family, like, owns Verenmore?
For generations and literally the very mountain and all the woods around it, they own.
Okay, you know what? I can kind of vibe with that. That's a decent twist, I guess. It's not foreshadowed even slightly in the first half, but conceptually fairly interesting.
Well, you clearly picked up on the power dynamic. You clearly picked up on the fact that, this guy could get away with a lot.
Yeah, but that could be for literally any reason. Up to and including the fact that this novel was probably edited like maybe once after the first draft was finished.
Even once, you think?
I mean, there's like few enough typos that I think it had a pass. Also, in the acknowledgements, RuNyx does make mention of like at least 2 people reading through for like spelling and grammar or something like that. So I know there's been at least 1 pass at it.
So let's go back to Vad's original characterization, because that was a very interesting point you made, that he didn't seem to like her. That from chapter 16 onward, it's like they have been in love for years.
Yeah, well, I hope me saying that he doesn't seem to want her there didn't sound like me saying he doesn't like her, because the whole first half is him and her exchanging sex eyes in the middle of class, and then other students commenting on the fact that they're visibly giving each other sex eyes, and the other students responding like, OMG, that's so hot and so crazy that you guys are doing that. And then whenever he and her are alone together, he's like, oh, little crow, woe is me that thou hast attended mine university and you tempt me with your purple eyes. I mustn't have sex with you, little crow. And then she's like, oh, but I really want you to have sex with me, Mr. Deverell, but I also don't want it, but I want you to possess me. And he's like, I will possess you mind, body, and soul. And then right up near the end of the first half, they do have actual sex for the first time. And it's a very unsettlingly described in a way that makes me think that like the words that were being used were not being considered in terms of like their sort of like connotative nebulas that like surround them. We can get into that later. But yeah, that's kind of the vibe of their relationship.
Yeah, I would be interested in talking about that later on, because in the later sex scenes, to its credit, there were not a lot of allusions. RuNyx seemed to go for the more common word and didn't want to get too flowery, which I appreciated. At least I don't read a lot from this genre, but the reason I don't is because I don't want to hear anything about someone's mauve avenger or pulsing loins.
Okay, well, the first half is really super extra bad about that, so I don't know what happened in the second half.
No, I swear it's not like that at all. That's crazy. We're gonna have to compare notes.
Well, I mean, there's not euphemism, like not those kinds of euphemisms, but it's like very, very unsexy.
Well, I'm not saying it was sexy either, but...
Let's talk about death, shall we? Mr. Deverell walked around his table to the board at the front of class, a marker in his left hand uncapped. He raised his hand, continuing to speak and write at the same time. Corvina was surprised to observe that he was left-handed. Perhaps it was because of the way he'd used his right the other day in the library on her that it made her unconsciously think he was aligned toward it. D-A-N-S-E-M-A-C-A-B-R-E. His deep voice enunciated the alphabets he wrote in bold block letters on the board, and turned to...
The alphabets?
The alphabets he wrote in bold block letters on the board, and turned to face the class. Dance macabre. Can anyone tell me what this is?
No, he was writing Aleph Bets. It's a clever Hebrew illusion.
It's a Hebrew illusion. Fun little joke for all the polyglots in the audience.
So we have our characterizations of Vad and Corvina. There's a power dynamic, a forbidden love.
Oh, I have a question for you.
Yes.
I'm turning this now. I'm interviewing you, so suck it.
Okay, I'm ready.
How old is Corvina?
Tell me she's over 18.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, she is. She's 21.
Oh, okay. I don't think that's crazy.
No, it's not crazy, but it's like, it's weird in its own ways, right? Because I feel like decision was made like just to subvert any arguments that like what they're doing might not be exactly above board.
Right, yeah. It made me physically sick in chapter 16 when I started, because they didn't really mention that he was a teacher until like the very end.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, what am I reading?
Yep.
So, I mean, I actually, that does help a lot that she's 21. And I think that's a good thing that you did that, because for something with this kind of power dynamic, if she were 18, this would be heinous.
Yeah, I mean, it still is, though, in my mind, because like she's effectively young. I mean, you can't really assign an age to it, but she's effectively young in the way that like she spends a good bit of the first half talking about how she's never been with a man. She's never had like a sexual experience with another partner, but she has longed her whole life to be possessed by a man, and the word possessed is used multiple times.
Oh yeah, no, they love that word. Oh, you want to know, Vad has been in an MMF threesome, though, so I guess he has enough experience for everyone.
Wait, he has?
Yeah, he has. I don't remember who. It really came and went, but man, he was talking about building the Eiffel Tower.
Damn.
I was like, oh my God, that's not very chaste.
No. Well, does it mention in the second half the fact that he was involved with another student previously?
No! Are you serious?
Wait, they don't resolve that in the second half? I thought they were going to resolve that.
No, dude, I swear, I wrote meticulous notes of every chapter. I don't know, except for the Eiffel Tower thing, because I didn't want to think about it. I don't know anything about what you're talking about.
Yeah, no.
Who?
Oh my god, I can't believe I have to explain this right now. Okay. So early on in the novel, he's set up as being like dangerous and mysterious, right, because he almost lost his job after he got caught in a relationship with another student who then went on to kill herself, unrelatedly, I think.
Wait, what was her name?
Alyssa. So she was Jade's former roommate. Jade being Corvina's best friend. Yeah.
Okay, and that's how Corvina got in there.
Yeah. Yeah, there's an opening. The student body seems to think there's a connection, but like the narrative seems to want us to think that there's not a connection and that that's just rumor and hearsay.
Right.
And then Vad himself at one point says, I only fucked her once before I knew she was a student, and we didn't have anything after that. So, but it's unclear in that moment if he's lying or not, because, you know, he's secretive and squirrely all the time.
He's dark and mysterious.
So like I was kind of expecting that it would be revealed in the second half, like what the truth was, but I guess they just forgot about that.
We just forgot. No, I mean, Alyssa maybe has come up like one time and to talk about why would be spoilers for later on, but no, that did not come up, Joshua. What was the mirror incident?
Oh god. Okay, it was kind of a nothing scene. Just randomly, Corvina, this happens near the end of the first half, she's taking a shower.
Sexily?
Yes, sexily. But just for herself, I guess. One of the mirrors shatters, and she goes to investigate, and she has a hallucination that her reflection is like trying to escape one of the other mirrors, one of the ones that didn't shatter, and then somebody walks in on her and is like, hey, are you okay? And she comes to, and the mirror that her spooky reflection was in was fine, but the other mirror actually did shatter.
Why? Why couldn't it have just been the same mirror?
I don't know.
That's so funny. Okay. Oh, was the bathroom incident the same thing as the mirror incident?
Okay, fine now. They both happen in a bathroom. That's the only mirror one that I know of. I mean, it would stand to reason.
It would stand to reason. Okay. They were referred to like as separate things, and you'd think you'd stick to one. So I was confused as to, you know, what was being referred to there, if those were two different things. But anyways.
I would not think that this book is put together enough to stick to a consistent vernacular there.
Gosh. So we've kind of seen that Corvina has all of these problems. She doesn't know what's real, and death surrounds her at every turn. What do you remember about Troy? Because Troy becomes very, very important posthumously, and a lot of the latter half is based off of him or his death.
Yeah, so in the first half, Troy is one of, I don't know, like if he was in a musical, he would definitely be in the ensemble, and you would only know his name because it's in like the little booklet you get as the usher like takes you to your seat or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He is kind of upbeat, but he's not as much of a jokester as like Jax is.
Gotcha. Okay.
I don't know the difference between him and Ethan, if I'm being honest. I think
well, one is dead.
Yeah, well, I didn't know who Troy was. Like, I wouldn't be able to pick him out of the friend group until he jumped off of the same tower that Alyssa had jumped off of the year previous.
The 1 year previous?
I think so.
Interesting. Okay, I couldn't quite get the chronology of some of this right, and that was probably my fault, RuNyx, I'll say that. So I can start picking up from there, and we'll see how much your predictions line up. Corvina really needs to call her doctor, Dr. Detta, and I'm assuming that's because of the mirror incident or just the general pandemonium. Does she give another reason for why she needs to call her doctor so bad?
She's been having hallucinations of like shadowy figures in the corners of rooms.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that started when she started attending Verenmore. That would be the only thing that I could think of.
So yeah, no, it's as though they've been lovers forever, and Corvina talks like mid-copulation about her mommy issues, which I thought was really, really interesting. And Vad talks about how I want to tame the madness inside you with my devil witch, and they no, actually, they're not copulating. To be fair, Vad is a very, very generous lover, even at his own, his own loss. So points to Vad and points to RuNyx for that. I thought, it was a pretty. He seemed to respect her throughout. Well, okay, he respects her in bed. That whatever. Still no.
Sorry, I was just drinking a sip of my Dark Academia red wine. I don't know, like, I guess in the logic of the book, he's exactly what she wants, but as an external observer, as a reader who was very much resisting the premise of the book, this whole thing it's squicky, to say the least.
Oh yeah, well sure, it's a little squicky. That's fair enough. So I don't even know whether Corvina actually gets to call Dr. Detta, because very soon afterwards, Troy's brother shows up.
Yeah, the investigator.
Yes. Do you know his name?
Is it Ajax?
It's Ajax. Okay. I thought that was Ajax Hunter has to be one of the silliest names I've heard in a long time.
Ajax Hunter?
Ajax Hunter. His name is
Oh
Ajax Hunter.
my god.
Yeah. So he's talking about he's like he has this little meet cute. It's not a love triangle, but it was a little interesting scene where Corvina pricks her hand on a rose and Ajax is like, "You better stay away from roses. They have thorns. Here, you drop this." He's kind of like Jan Struthers in Empress Teresa, because he's kind of silly. I don't really think he has any actual investigative powers, and he awkwardly offers Corvina a note that's like, "Hey, meet me at the lake later." And
does he not end up being important? Because he factors heavily into my predictions.
oh, he's important. No, he's very, very important. Don't worry.
Okay.
He's gonna matter. But he grew up with Vad, and that's how he knew about the Purple Eyes prophecy or whatever. And then he reveals what I just told you earlier about how how Vad owns all of Verenmore and the very mountain below it. But here's the crazy part, Joshua. And here's my question for you. What do you know about the Slayer's legend?
Okay, so the Slayer's legend is told piecemeal throughout the first half in a way that makes it very confusing.
Try.
So, in my estimation, 100 years ago, a group of students was ritually murdering townspeople as well as other students by taking them out into the woods, doing some kind of maybe sex-related murder ritual, and then that's it, I guess. They don't really explain what reason they were doing this for.
Oh, don't worry, they never do.
Perfect. That's the essence of horror, right? It's the things you don't see. It's the sex murderers you don't find out the motivation for.
Well, sex murder, that's a lot of dopamine right there. I don't know what else you need.
It's so much dopamine. So then there's also another rumor that I think is the same one, where every 5 years, Verenmore has a festival called the Black Ball.
Yes.
And somebody dies.
Yes.
And it's not, they don't die because of the ball, they just do always die on the night of the ball. And I think originally the Slayers used the night of the Black Ball as their original killing time, which doesn't make sense to me, because how long is any one student at Verenmore that they could be a Slayer for multiple Black Balls in a row, right? Because they'd have to be there for at least 10 years.
Right.
If they're only doing it once every 5 years. And if they're only doing it once every 5 years, then how is this rumor becoming so entrenched in town lore so quickly, right? It would take at least a couple to establish that it was the same people every time. So it doesn't really make sense, is what I'm saying. That's what I know.
But you got the gist of it. Anyways, keep that in the back of your head, because the lake's very important to the Slayers, obviously. And Ajax reveals that Vad most likely murdered his own grandfather, because the stairs that he supposedly tripped down were much too short and small to have been enough to break your neck on. And then Vad appears, and Ajax and Vad have a literal dick measuring contest. And they do admit whose dick is bigger. It's probably Vad's. I can't remember. It might have been Ajax's. It completely glossed over it. And whilst or shortly after copulating in the woods, there's a gross little predator prey thing they do where Vad nearly literally chases her through the woods and then bends her over a stump. He reveals that his grandfather was the leader of the Slayers this whole time. Did you see that one come in, Joshua?
Wow, I care so immensely about this grandfather character that doesn't even have a name and is not mentioned even once in the first half. I'm invested.
Old Grandpa Deverell, we call him.
Wow.
His girlfriend is a witch, which won't matter for a long, long time. Just keep that in the back of your head that there's a witch grandma somewhere. The victims' graves are empty because the bodies have never been found. And this is where Vad reveals that he let Corvina into Verenmore.
Wait, so the 15 graves in the woods are the graves of previous Black Ball victims?
However the Slayer victims, they were 15 Slayer victims, and but they're ceremonial graves. The bodies were never found.
Where were the Slayers buried? Because part of the legend was that the Slayers themselves got caught in the act one year and then were murdered en masse by a separate group of students.
Wait. Oh shoot, maybe those were they. I can't remember. It was kind of whiplash because we learned. So originally, the theory is that Vad's granddad killed the Slayers. Then it was Vad's granddad was the Slayer leader, and Vad killed him because he's evil. So we kind of vacillate. The graves are empty. That's all you need to know. There are bodies somewhere, not in the graves. Before we even move forward, does Vad have a vasectomy? And is that mentioned explicitly?
He mentions that he has or had one, already.
Okay.
Before they have sex the first time.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
And he asks if she's, like, free of STDs, and she asks him the same thing, which I thought was, my first reaction was like, oh, okay, so this book is written by someone who has had sex. Mm-hmm. I wasn't sure of that initially. And also, this book is written by someone who's, like, conscious of, like, good pre-sex etiquette.
Yeah, it was pretty nice.
But also, I was like, it doesn't make sense for Corvina to know how to have this conversation because she's never had this experience, unless it's in one of the, like, bodice ripper romances that she talks about loving to have read as a child. So,
What follows is, I guess, a sort of fun and games montage of Corvina and Vad's relationship deepening. They have a lot of sex, both on and off camera, and nothing incredibly important happens until Corvina has this random dream about a blood orgy. She's on a throne riding Vad, and then everyone's like biting each other to death and exsanguinating, she says, all over the dance floor. It's very, very weird, but I do want you to remember that one because that comes back. And then she sees this dream about finding bodies in a lake. And Ajax facilitates the dredging of the lake, and then they find some bodies. And I think that's pretty much all there is to that.
Whose bodies? How old are they?
I don't know, Joshua. I thought they were the victims. I thought they were the victims. Maybe they were the Slayers. I thought they were the victims.
From like 100 years ago?
I don't know. They were preserved. They were preserved by
That doesn't make any sense.
No, they do mention like they only found like bits and pieces, but it was like enough to make an identification with Ajax's FBI magic or whatever. I don't care.
I care about these dead people.
Did the murder of crows that has a bond with Corvina show up in the first half?
It's mentioned briefly, and there was also like a part that kind of pissed me off because it was talking about, there's like a crow that they encounter the first time Corvina and Vad are alone in the woods together. Mm-hmm. And Corvina says some like dumb bullshit about how like, I can trust you because the crow stuck around while you were here, which means that it trusts you because if it didn't trust you, it would have attacked you. And I was just like, no, it wouldn't have. That doesn't make any sense. Context, as someone who used to work at an animal rescue and has helped rescue several crows.
As a bird guy.
Like, no, it would not have attacked you. It would have just flown away because attacking expends a lot of energy and crows are not, like, necessarily predatory. It's much safer to conserve energy and just run away. So as a bird person, pseudoscience about animals, like, kind of ticks me off a little bit. I don't like it when crows are used as, like, an aesthetic thing and not treated as, like, living creatures. And this book is all about aesthetics.
Didn't it kind of remind you of the chipmunks and Empress Teresa? The animalistic bond that they have?
Oh my god, not the chipmunks.
That's all I could think about. This is like the Gothic Empress Teresa, at least in that regard.
But like, does Corvina actually have magic? Because she goes to this school, which feels like it's going to be Hogwarts, and then it's just like, today we're reading Hamlet.
No, I don't know. She had some dreams that, were true in the end and kind of came true, but also I don't think it's the craziest thing in the world for your subconscious mind to think, okay, maybe there are bodies in a lake. So I don't. It's one of those faith versus reality kind of situations.
What about Mo? Does Mo turn out to be magical?
Mo turns out to be more benevolent than we thought, but I don't.
I thought Mo was benevolent. He set up.
Okay, he seemed kind of like scary when I first saw him in like chapter 17 or whatever, or heard him.
Okay,
you know what I mean. But no, he does. I mean, as far as we know, as far as we're confirmed, it's just another hallucination.
For context, for all the club members out there listening, Mo is the name of the voice that Corvina has heard since childhood.
Right.
He occasionally steps in to offer her like very pointless advice, but narratively, his function is, I mean, very bold-facedly to tell her to go to a place that she would have no other reason to go to,
yes,
so that the plot can continue. At least that's what he does in the first half. Like, there's a couple of times where he's like, Corvina, go to the tower, and she's like, I'm gonna go to the tower, and it's like, okay, like, how did Mo know this? Like,
right.
Why is he telling her this now? Like, isn't there a more organic, artful way that she could have decided to go to the tower?
Nope.
No, it's just lazy. It's just so lazy.
So yeah, no, and she has like an oblique like knowledge of what dead people might be thinking, and it seems to be a power of hers, but it's nothing is ever overtly magical, which I appreciated. You know, I liked the ambiguity there. I don't need to know per se, but it was something that was kind of in the back of my head. I was hoping you would have a better idea from the establishment of it, but as far as we know, she might just be very intuitive.
Yeah, because her mom seems very magical at the start, especially because the book opens not with her, but with this backstory of Vad being given a prediction by some kind of local soothsayer, which then comes true.
Yeah, old Zelda.
Yeah, so the novel, like, it fronts magic, right? Like, it sets up that magic is going to be important from the beginning, and then there's just no magic.
No overt magic. I mean, it's not a wizard school, so it's just a little subtle.
Well, it doesn't really feel like a subversion so much as like a, I don't know, unfulfilled promise.
Well, call it what you will. Bait and switch.
Yeah.
So, speaking of magic, there's kind of an interesting scene where Corvina does tarot card readings for all her little friends and draws a crowd, and that is kind of implied to be a little bit magical. And then this is kind of how Vad admits his love to Corvina surreptitiously. He's like, does the woman I love me back? And she draws like the green checkmark card or whatever, and she's like, yes she does. Oddly, it really made me appreciate Handbook for Mortals, because I remembered the tarot card reading scenes in there to be a lot more engaging. With this one, it was just, I pulled out a card and it was this one.
Yes, this book does tarot so dirty. I was also thinking of Handbook for Mortals and how, like, there's like much more ambiguity to the way that like Zaid's tarot readings like turn out to be true and untrue. And just like I feel like Lady Sarum has like a much better understanding of what the tarot cards actually mean,
right?
Like in their various positions and in their various orderings.
She has the lived experience.
Yeah, this novel feels like somebody Googled tarot card meanings and then just kind of was like, oh, she drew the towers. Guess what? That means disaster is going to happen later. Like, okay,
right,
cool. I've played Persona. Like, I know what these things mean. You got to do a little more than that.
Joshua, what on this planet is an ink moon?
An ink moon is when the...
Frantically Googles.
No, hold on. I want to try to figure this out.
This isn't a trick question. This won't be interesting.
Oh, well, now that I know it's not going to be interesting, I don't feel like answering your question anymore. I pass.
The ball takes place on an ink moon, which is not a thing. I don't know why she made up a new thing for the moon to be when there are like 5 different things that a moon can be that's interesting and regular enough. Like a waning gibbous moon, or a harvest moon, or a blue moon, or
couldn't it just be a new moon? Because there's no moon and it'd be black. So
sure, but why didn't they say that? I don't know. It was weird. It threw me off. I don't know. Maybe that's a nitpick. But that's when the black ball occurs. Vad gives her, okay, guess what he gives her to wear for the ball, and it's going to be a reference to one of our previous
A little black nothing? Is it a little black nothing dress?
a little black nothing dress. It's a little black nothing dress.
Oh my god. I think I actually wrote something about that in my book the first time the black ball is mentioned. I think I was like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if she wore like a little black nothing dress to the black ball?
Oh my god.
The spirit of Norman lives on through ye, RuNyx. You're channeling him in between tarot card readings. What about that piano there? The one you were repairing?
It was my grandfather's, he told her, his teeth gnashing. They liked having music with their murder. Corvina shuddered, remembering what they had done in that place.
I can't believe we kissed by it. That's just so macabre.
Something shifted in his eyes, a side of his lips curving. I would have kissed you bathed in blood, Corvina, if I had a chance to kiss you while 1,000 ghosts rose from their grave. I would have kissed you. Don't doubt that.
Damn, that's a lot of ghosts.
That's so many ghosts. It's more than one or two. So we're almost done, and then we'll get into your predictions for the end. I just kind of want to set the stage for you so you have enough to go off of. But the black ball is a little bit of a nothing burger as well. But then it becomes like...
It is?
It is. But then it becomes strangely orgiastic in a way that was reminiscent of her blood orgy dream. St. Balasar University was a pretty, like, I guess, like, low-key kind of conservative university. But I still think it was, like, people were, like, really getting hot and heavy in the middle of the dance floor, according to Corvina. So it was a little bit weird. And Vad gives Corvina a promise ring.
A promise ring? What is he, 17?
I don't know, but it's not a real ring. It's not like a proposal ring.
Well, yeah, no, I know what a promise ring is. Like,
but that's the important part. It's really important that you know that.
Did kids in your high school not give those to each other?
I mean, no, actually. That like, dead ass, that never happened. I thought that was like something from the 70s.
No, I knew people that gave each other promise rings. I mean, they were always cringe people, but they were like, I'm going to be with you forever, baby girl.
Yeah,
and they would give them like a pewter ring, and then they broke up, like the first year after they both graduated high school, and they went to different colleges.
Right. Okay, so... 75% of the book now, Joshua. You are given the tools to write the end of Gothikana. Go. A hedge of dark roses in bloom that she'd not noticed before caught her eye, the red as deep as the blood that pooled around Troy's head on the ground.
So I thought I would start with, like, right after Toby's death, I guess. So I figured his brother, Ajax, is probably going to arrive to solve the murder, and I'm guessing he's going to get involved with Corvina. I feel like there's a good chance that he's handsome enough to rival Vad, but, like, he's nice and not possessive, which, like, disturbingly is, like, a turnoff for her.
He's like the Jackson to Vad's Mac.
Yeah, I think he's, like, a real Jackson type, so basically, like, the ideal boyfriend. And, like, a normal, well-adjusted person with, like, hobbies and interests.
Right.
And, like, good-looking, gets along with all of her friends. But, of course, that's not interesting for a novel. So I think that she is going to lead him to that cabin in the woods that they, like, happen upon randomly at one point in the first half.
Oh, well, yeah, and she sees, like, a shadowy figure behind the curtain or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, she does. And I predict that what they find there is a sort of, like, half-transformed former student who's, like, now part monster.
Ooh.
And they don't have a way to break her out, so they leave her there. They promise they're coming back, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think then the friend group gets together with Ajax, and they're like, okay, this is definitely Vad's doing. He's hiding some weird shit. He's got this person trapped in a cabin. So on the night of the Black Ball, using Corvina as bait, they're going to lure Vad out and trap him somehow, like Scooby-Doo style. Like, I don't know. Somehow at the Black Ball. Like, maybe they'll put a big net down on the floor. It doesn't really matter. How am I doing so far?
You are 0 for 10.
Perfect.
But I like this a lot, so keep going.
Perfect. I figured none of this would be correct. When I came up with predictions, I did not even actually try to make them like accurate. I just thought, you know what would be fun?
Yeah.
Before the black ball happens, Vad at some point corners Corvina, and he's like, I know you're up to something with Ajax, and he warns her to keep away, and she's like defiant, which like turns them both on, and so like they have sex about it.
Ooh.
And then the scene ends. So then skipping forward to the night of the ball, I'm thinking, like I said, Corvina's going to be bait. They're hoping to catch Vad, but Jade leads Corvina out into the woods under the auspices of like just stepping outside with her for a second to get some air, right? And then Jade kidnaps her and takes her out to the cemetery where the empty graves are. And then Corvina realizes that she's all alone out here with Jade, and that Jade was the evil mastermind all along. And because her friends were expecting to catch Vad, they won't notice that Corvina is gone until it's too late, right?
Yeah. Okay, you're coming back. You're coming back around.
Okay, so something happens. Corvina, being at Verenmore, fulfills some kind of prophecy. Something. Jade is like an avatar of like the Slayers. She's like possessed by, I don't know, some conglomerate of all their spirits or something. And if they kill Corvina, something magic, something free their souls. But at that exact moment, Vad sweeps into the cemetery and he pulls the tarp off of the piano that he had concealed there. And it turns out the song that he's been practicing, the Dance Macabre, is a magic spell that can banish the spirits of the Slayers forever. So he plays the song, and Jade is like, no! And then the spirits evaporate or something. And then Corvina's friends and Ajax arrive, and they're like, what happened? And Vad's like, nothing. And then he and Corvina, I don't know, like 69 or something in the woods. The end.
You have no idea, Joshua, how desperately I want that to be true. You were 1 for 30. If my count is accurate. I'll give you 2, maybe 1.5.
So 1 out of 15. We're simplifying our fractions.
Shut up, English major. What do you know? I was going to actually ask you which of Corvina's friends has been dead this whole time and was replaced by a brood parasite, so to speak.
Yeah, it's got to be Jade, right? Because Jade is the only one who was missing for some span of time.
Yep.
Because in between the 2 years, after Alyssa's death and before Jade came back to school to finish what she started, she was MIA.
Right. So the real Jade is dead. They find her burnt corpse in the abandoned cabin in the woods.
Oh. And
presumably the replacement Jade was the figure behind the curtain or whatever. So at the end of the black ball, who goes missing? Jade and Roy, who Roy I thought was a man for the entirety of the story hitherto. Roy ends up in like the lake, and Corvina has to dramatically save her, and Ajax gives her CPR, and they can't find Vad. Vad goes looking for Jade. Then there's, like you said, really, really good call. Jade kidnaps Corvina, and as though she is a Shami from True Allegiance, does a James Bond style, this is how I plotted everything speech, while Corvina is immobilized by the dust of a tree that Jade, so the girl that we know as Jade is not Jade. Her real name is never given.
Perfect.
I don't even know what to call her. So she reveals that she shares a grandfather with Vad. So
she's his cousin.
They are cousins. When you mentioned the Edgar Allan Poe thing, I resisted the urge to mention that so much because that's so funny that they were cousins. And Jade's like, I want Vad because only he can ever understand the darkness in my heart, and you're just a whore. I'm going to take my cousin carnally, and there's nothing you can do about it. I use this ancient root of a leaf from probably the Amazon. They say, like, no one knows, but it probably is from the Amazon, and it controls your mind. And that's how I've gotten all of the students to jump off the exact same tower, and you'll be next.
Wait, there's a perfect mind control route in this universe?
Yes. You just blow it in their face like it's a Disney movie.
Please don't tell me that this gets used in a sexual context. Please don't tell me that. If you tell me that, I'm ending the call right now.
No. I thought it would. I had that exact same thought, but it did not. So Mo, in his benevolence, helps Corvina fight through the influence, and somehow they end up on the roof, and then Vad swoops in and is like, yeah, Jade, baby, my cousin, I'm Gothic, so I love you. I think you're so hot. And Corvina's like, no. And Vad's like, just kidding, bitch. I'm going to throw you off the roof. And thus dies not Jade. And Corvina goes to the hospital. For some reason, Dr. Detta finally shows up. They put her in a medically induced coma, and she recovers 6 months later and visits her mom, and they have like this little lucid moment together.
Wait, so what was the name of the unnamed girl in Handbook for Mortals who assaults Zayd in a parking garage?
Unnamed girl. You will know me in a future installment of the Handbook for Mortals series, TM. That's what I called her.
God, I hope so. I need to know what happens with Jackson, dude. It's so.
I know. I'm so really excited for the sequel. Lanny, you need to get on that. We need
a sequel. Lanny, please.
It no matter what it is, it's going to be more engaging romantically than this.
I want to know what happens because, like, in a post-pandemic, like, is there going to be like a time skip forward so we're like post-pandemic? Like, I want to know where Handbook for Mortals is at, like chronologically, in terms of, is it in lockstep with our world,
right? Or will it be a parallel universe?
Because usually these kinds of like trilogies come out, sort of fast enough that like they keep up with the times,
right?
But like we've had a pandemic since the last one, so like, right. Is Jackson alive?
Did Jackson die from COVID?
He can't have died from COVID. I hope what happens is like he's in a new band now, like a more relevant band. He left the Plain White Tees and now he's a member of like
the Black Eyed Peas.
I don't know, Good Kid.
I don't know, Good Kids on the Curb. Whatever. So then the epilogue. Talk about Handbook for Mortals. There's a time skip. 6 months later, or I don't even know. It might be more than 6 months later. They are living together in this idyllic little life with their dog, who is a 2-year-old husky named Count, presumably for Count Dracula.
Wow, crazy.
And whilst copulating, Vad says, "Hey, Corvina, I got you a gift." Now, Joshua, I want you to guess what that gift is.
Can I have a hint? This is a big question.
The hint is they were copulating.
A baby?
Yeah. So he announces that he has reversed his vasectomy, which I'm pretty sure has a very, very low success rate.
Oh my gods. Without telling her?
Yeah, he announces this in her.
Hey, man, that's marital R-word. That's SA at the least.
Yeah, she wants a baby, though.
Oh, she already said she wanted one?
At some point, they established they wanted babies. I don't remember why this came up.
Okay, I take it back, I guess.
Like, Corvina is ecstatic to hear this. So I guess...
Of course she is. Why wouldn't she be?
Right, of course. But then Corvina is like, we're going back to Verenmore because that's where we belong. We are twisted and dark individuals, and we're going to take our husky with us. And I don't know what they're going to do. I assume Vad's going to teach, or maybe they'll live in the cabin together, but they make that very unclear. And talk about Handbook for Mortals. The penultimate chapter is titled How It Ends. The epilogue, wait for it, is titled ... Or does it?
Oh my god. Do they?
Or do they? I'm doing this after the end of the recording. I can't believe I forgot this. I'm going to leave this in because I think this is so funny that I forgot this. But you have to know, Joshua, before we stop recording this entire episode, the thing that happens in the epilogue is that Corvina writes a novel about her experiences in Verenmore that she calls Gothikana.
Are you fucking kidding me? This is the same as the ending of Atonement. Have you read that?
No, I've not read Atonement. What is Atonement?
Oh my god. Atonement is this, like, high modern British literature, lit fic, realistic fiction novel type of deal. It's about, like, a little girl who tells a lie that, like, causes her family's whole life to fall apart. And then at the end, it's like, very pretentious. It's very overwritten. It has critical acclaim. It won tons of critical acclaim, but I don't know. I didn't enjoy it at all. And then at the end, there's a twist ending where it turns out that the whole story was being written by that same little girl in the future as an old woman, and it's her dying wish to see the book published so that the truth about what really occurred will get out. But throughout the novel, she's been embellishing the truth, so you really have no way of knowing what the actual truth is. It's this very heady critique of, like, writing itself and its metafiction, and it's so deep.
No, I never heard of that before, but I guess that's where she got it from.
Maybe.
That's so funny. So that is Gothikana. I don't want to talk too much about the technical issues because it's not very interesting.
It's the kind of thing that works well in a live critique session, less so in a podcast format.
Even in a live critique session, it's something that can be just iterated out. But RuNyx, I'm not convinced you're a human being. We're in a new age of AI where these things can be auto-generated from a couple of buzzwords. I mean, not to quote Captain Ahab, but there is some unsuffusing thing beyond thee, thou clear spirit, to whom all eternity is but time. All thy creativeness is mechanical.
So true, bestie.
There's some feeling of unreality under it.
There's a lot of phrasing that feels almost correct, but not correct. And this will happen in environmental description, it'll happen in dialogue, and you know what is meant.
Right.
But it doesn't feel like a human with a firm grasp of the English language wrote it.
Right. Something that really ticked me off, I don't know why, but there's this one phrase that I keep thinking about. The cover of the piano was down, making it appear flat since it wasn't playing. What does that mean?
I think it's like a concert piano, right? And like the little arm that holds up the cover isn't up, and so like it's not being played, so it's closed.
Yeah, I guess so. Like in the Looney Tunes things where
Right.
there's like Tom and Jerry's living in the piano. I see what you mean.
That's exactly what I was thinking of. How did you know?
Cultural touch point.
For me, the one that really sticks out, and it sticks out for more reasons than just the phrasing, is during one of Vad's early classes that he's teaching, he says, "My thesis is the correlation and influence of music on literature throughout the ages."
It's a lot of words.
So his thesis is the correlation. It's not on the correlation. It is itself the correlation and influence. Not just that, but if you remove the part about influence, it reads, "My thesis is the correlation of music on literature," which does not make sense. Because the correlation and influence part of that sentence operate as a unit, like the correlation and influence become like a single thing grammatically.
Right.
For the sentence to make sense, you should be able to remove either one and it still work. But my thesis is the correlation of music on literature throughout the ages doesn't make sense. Because you can't have a correlation on something.
It's just it's so bizarre and just slightly weird enough to where it feels weird even talking about it. This is self-published, right? I didn't look at the Amazon description, and I couldn't find anything in the dust jacket about it.
I believe it is. Yeah.
I don't read a lot of self-published work, but I can't imagine this is common. It feels like, again, an AI-generated image. You know how they try to like make a human figure, but they can't quite get the hands right.
Yeah.
There's just one little thing that nibbles at the back of your mind. I would think you could benefit from more beta readers at the very minimum.
I don't want to think about the possibility of this being written by an AI because that really deeply unsettles me, like on a very visceral level. Like it makes my stomach feel like slimy inside.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like what I want to believe is that somebody who just doesn't have that much experience editing their own work and who like maybe has some weird sex hangups wrote this, and someone who's like maybe not totally aware of like how people perceive the things that they write. Not that like a computer wrote it based on a prompt.
Yeah, it might be just a team of like unpaid interns that they keep in the vault somewhere.
Capital T, capital V.
Capital T, capital V, which apparently doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And I thought it was going to be super, super important because they make a big deal about her going down into it. But no, I think really the one thing that this is missing from the bones of this enemies to lovers, whatever age gap, teacher-student romance is a little bit of fun. Gothic works can be silly. They're not experiences where you mire yourself in one feeling the entire time. What is nice about the darker aspects is they're really made more defined by the light moments. And I don't know if we ever cut loose enough, at least in the second half. Maybe there were more fun in games in the beginning, but
There's really not, no. And it doesn't even feel that Gothic. I mean, the only thing for me that was propping up this Gothic vibe was all of the pictures in the book. Like the book, in terms of presentation, for people who can't see it, the book is full of stock images that take up entire pages, and it's like a very high contrast image of like a man kissing a woman's neck, and then there's like a Bram Stoker quote over it.
Right.
Or it's like an overexposed shot of a Gothic archway in a cathedral in England, and then there's like, I don't know, some other random quote over it. It doesn't really matter, but like the content itself doesn't really feel that Gothic. I mean, for one thing, Jade talks like a Marvel character throughout the first half. And Corvina does a little bit too. There's a part where she says like, mysterious enough for you? But it's like, okay, like what am I reading right now?
right.
Jade has some gag about like, oh, I hate mornings. I'm so quirky. I just love to sleep. And she's one like lolcat away from like eating a taco on screen. Like it's really just not Gothic at all.
The attempts that RuNyx makes to further this sense of Gothicism, I find a little bit, I guess the best word would be self-congratulatory. It's very weird, and it's kind of an imposition on your reader to say, oh, this story is so macabre.
Oh, thank you for bringing this up.
Because like it's like every time this gets mentioned, it's like RuNyx is patting herself on the back. Things can exist for their own sake and can be scary, or you don't have to mention that Corvina's entire body shivered at the very thought of his gravelly words. It was weird.
Did you read the author's note? I'm guessing you didn't, since it was technically
I didn't.
the first half. Okay, so in the author's note, she does that sort of self-congratulatory thing that you're alluding to when they say, there is also a mysterious, morally gray hero who will frustrate you to no end because his point of view is sparse, and my intent is for you to feel the same as the protagonist does towards him. Confused, frustrated, suspicious, and lustful.
What?
Gothikana is vastly different from anything I've written so far, but it's also the story closest to my heart. Verenmore is incredibly special to me, with characters, incidents, locations, all inspired by some true events from my own life. If you decide to read and take this journey with me, I hope you will enjoy it. So, like, we're getting a little bit of Onision in there, too, I think, with, like, this story represents the most nuanced version of myself.
This is my Pokemon Emerald.
A little Reaper's Creek. Yeah, a little Reaper's Creek energy in there. But just, like, the way that RuNyx describes Vad in this very deep way, or in a way that would imply that he's so complex and multifaceted that, like, a single reading of the novel will be insufficient to like fully grasp all of the nuances and complexities that have been layered over each other delicately. It's just a weird way to like front your novel.
The old saying goes, we hate literature which has a palpable design on us. And every time we're told to be, lustful about something, or to be chilled by something, or to find something macabre, readers are smart enough to know when they're being force-fed something. And on it, I'm not saying that like the chilling parts weren't chilling in their own right. It was just ruined by Ajax being like, this would make even the bravest bastard quake in his boots, or whatever he says when they go to the stupid cabin.
I don't remember which video it's in, but there's an old Yahtzee Croshaw clip of him talking about how he hates sanity meters in video games. I think this might be one of his reviews of one of the Amnesia games.
Probably.
Because he says he hates being told how to feel, and he feels like the narrative and the mechanics of the game should make the player feel the way the game wants them to feel, right? So like an insanity meter just tells you how scared you're supposed to be as opposed to organically scaring you via the game itself. And I feel like this book is doing the literature version of that. For example, every time it describes gargoyles, it goes out of its way to let you know that gargoyles are like scary and grotesque, and they're made of stone and they're creepy, and they look like demons. So here's one from really early on. Gargoyles stuck out high on the walls, masking the water gutters in a grotesque display. Like, we have to be told that the gargoyles are grotesque. And I hate to like use a cliche, but it's really a show don't tell instance. Show us that the gargoyles are grotesque by describing like, what about these specific gargoyles, faces, wings, abs, dicks, I don't care, is scary to you. Like, let me know so that I can imagine it for myself. Like, don't just tell me they're scary. You can probably tell by my tone that this really grated on me because the novel handles so much of its description this way, where it continually tells you how you're supposed to feel, whether it's about the sex, about the spooky stuff, or about how nice the gardens are. Spacious. Much bigger than her bedroom had been at the cottage, this room had 2 twin-sized beds facing each other, a bedside table beside each, and a huge wooden armoire cupboard at the corners. Right opposite the entry door was a huge, stunning arched window that looked down at the castle fence amidst the lush green woods, and then further down the mountain. The ceiling was high and had wooden beams she knew were a signature of Gothic architecture, one she couldn't remember the name of for the life of her.
Are we sure it's legal to have the titles of all the songs in your playlist for a book in the book?
I didn't even think about that.
That might be okay. So one thing about copyright in books, you can say that your characters went to McDonald's, but the more detail you kind of add to that, the more legally gray it becomes. It's why you can't have lyrics written out without the author's permission. That's what made Handbook for Mortals special, is Lanny Sarum actually had the songwriter's permission to include them. If you do this without permission, it can put you in a lot of trouble, and I'm not sure whether a list of songs that match the vibe of your book is... I mean, maybe it'll be legal, but I think it's a slippery slope in terms of fair use.
I think more than like the actual names themselves, I was kind of going insane trying to figure out how they were ordered, right? Because it's not by artist, it's not alphabetical by title. It seems like it's just random.
Well, I mean, you ever make playlists for your books? I do it like by vibe, you know, the vibe changes throughout. So I'll need to listen to this playlist and see if it's any good.
Are we supposed to listen to it in order then? And then like read along with it?
I think so.
Because otherwise, how is it controlling the speed at which you're reading?
You're supposed to read it and then listen to it afterwards and just hallucinate. I don't know.
Okay, well, I can do that. Also, the last song on the list, Nevermore by Adrian von Ziegler. I don't know if you would know this, Andrew, but Adrian von Ziegler is like a pretty prominent, like, stock fantasy music writer.
I did not know that.
He makes those like songs that you put on in the background when you're playing a D&D campaign and you don't want to play like recognizable video game music. You put on like stock fantasy music. So I just think it's very interesting that there's like stock dark fantasy music in the playlist of this book, which also has a bunch of stock dark fantasy clip art interspersed between the chapters and like very stock dark quotes that are taken out of context.
Right.
Another thing that I thought was kind of interesting, and this goes along with the sort of like random assortment of like Gothic vibes that this book is trying to collect without really seeming to put much thought into like what these things like compile to actually mean. On RuNyx's website, there's a quote attributed to Kafka. And it's under the section on the website called My Writing Mantra. Here's the quote. Don't bend. Don't water it down. Don't try to make it logical. Don't edit your own soul according to the fashion. Rather, follow your most intense obsessions mercilessly. Franz Kafka. Now, I would like you to tell me whether or not you think that is a Kafka quote.
I am assuming that it's not, if you're going in on this.
It is extremely not a Kafka quote. Looked it up. I actually found the origin of it. This quote belongs to one Anne Rice, who is a scholar of Kafka, who at one point wrote an introduction to a translation of his collected short stories. And in that introduction was that quote in which she was describing the tenets that made Kafka's work special. But these were not like his personal tenets that guided him as he wrote. This is like an ex post facto kind of classification of his work.
Is this a common misattribution, or did RuNyx just come up with this?
According to an article that I read, there are other people that also make this mistake. I also found the quote on Goodreads attributed to Kafka, so like it might be a little more widespread than just RuNyx, but it is something that you could Google and find out is not true.
That's so funny. Why does Franz Kafka follow us everywhere we go? I've never even read a single Kafka thing.
Okay, we're reading a Kafka novel next. It's gonna happen.
Not for the podcast.
We could.
What are we gonna tell Franz?
Though, right? Because like none of them are finished.
Jesus Christ. Well, we know a lot about following our obsessions, and we know a lot about not editing things.
We sure do.
You mentioned that Vad was kind of unconvincing as a graduate student. Do you want to add more of your personal experiences onto that? Tell me why.
Yeah, so it's not just like the power that he seems to wield within the department, although that is a big part of it. I mean, as a grad student myself, I do teach classes, but there's like something about the way that he talks about literature that does not reflect like an English student at the graduate level, even a little bit. So when he describes his thesis, he says, "My thesis is the correlation and influence of music on literature throughout the ages." So the weird grammar stuff aside, the influence of music on literature, that is so vague. I can guarantee that if you were, I don't know if he's a PhD or a master's student, but either way, if you went to your advisor with this thesis, they would be like, what music, what literature? I need like a setting for these things. And then it gets even more vague throughout the ages. So the thesis is correlation and influence of music on literature throughout the ages. What are the ages? Like what time period are we talking about here? Because there's a lot of music, there's a lot of places, there's a lot of literature. We need to be specific. And what does the correlation have to do with it? Like the music and literature correlate in that they're both art, but like, does he mean interaction? And if so, how is that different from influence? This just is not a thing that a grad student would say, because to get admitted to an English degree at the graduate level, you need to be able to express in very specific terms what your interests are and why they interest you. And this betrays like a vagueness that wouldn't really fly in a real program. There's other places too where he kind of expands on his quote unquote thesis. So in chapter 7, he says, he's talking about the dance macabre, not just the song, but like the concept of dancing with death, I guess. And he says, the idea emerged in the late Middle Ages, the idea that there is universality in death, that regardless of who you are in your life or your station or how much you possess, you'll have to dance with death in the end. Kind of beautiful, if macabre, isn't it? Okay, good start. Fair enough. This is like a introductory English class, so I could see him saying that to a room full of students. Then he says, the idea later impacted art, music, and literature. In literature in particular, this became an allegorical device that inspired the use of many motifs to represent and even foreshadow death in stories. Now close your eyes and think about death. What's the first image that comes to mind? So then he has all the students just like think of symbols that are associated with death, and so people are literally shouting out like skull, skeleton, crow, and he's like good, and like frantically writing stuff down on the blackboard, and like that's the end of it.
That's it?
That's it. What was this lesson? I don't understand what this lesson is. And this quote, literature in particular, this became an allegorical device that inspired the use of many motifs to represent and even foreshadow death in stories. What motifs? What are they representing? And if they're representing death, which is what you say later in the sentence, why do you say represent? A dance with death does not represent a dance with death. It just is that. That's not how that works.
He wants to let the reader's imagination flourish. He's just pushing them in the right direction. That's his teaching style.
No, that doesn't make any sense. Like, you need you need to put specific images in the mind of the reader or the student so that they can then imagine what permutation of that specific thing they bring to the table. But without that specificity, none of this works because it's all vague and it's all a haze. There's also a part where he describes Macbeth as, quote, a tragedy about the political ambition of power.
So power's political ambition personified.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, that's, again, another one of those really uncanny phrases where you can kind of see where they're going, but it doesn't quite stick the landing.
It super doesn't. And it's extra weird coming from the mouth of someone who's supposed to be, an expert in this topic.
Right. he might be just like a nepotism baby. No. It would be so funny if he like didn't know anything and he was just like coasting off his family status and he was just like making all of this up as he goes along. He's like, motifs are used in foreshadowing. Class, think of motifs. Go. And then just...
That would actually be that'd be great. Like, if that had been the twist, I would have loved that, because there's a part in my notes where I wrote, he seems like a high school student trying to do a report on a book he didn't read. Because he talks in like English terms, like he uses the word motif and he like drops the late Middle Ages, but like he doesn't actually develop those ideas. He just throws them out there knowing that they're like recognized entities in the field of English literature.
He's like three high schoolers stacked on top of each other in a trench coat trying to pass themselves off as a college professor.
Oh, sweet. So you're saying that Corvina has actually been in a foursome.
Yeah. They're like, yeah, we're going to get laid tonight. You just keep talking about motifs. No, that's so interesting. His status as a professor didn't really come up in the second half. But I don't even know if I would have picked up on some of that stuff that you were talking about. And I know it's the point of the story, but talk about his handling of his classroom. I know it's the point of their forbidden love or whatever, but the fact that it's not played as extremely creepy and also not any character really picks up on it, that Vad is saying Dracula is all about female sexuality, while eye-banging Corvina is really gross.
Yeah, pardon me if I'm repeating myself, but in the first half, some of the students do notice it. And one of them even remarks, like, if you could bottle that kind of sexual tension and sell it, you'd be a millionaire, or something weird like that.
That never comes up. That never comes up in the second half. They all forget.
Wait, really?
They're like, ooh, who could Corvina's secret lover be? Or who could this woman that Vad asked about whether she loved him back in the tarot card readings? Who could that be?
There must be some kind of weird discontinuity between the two halves, because in the first half, people are openly speculating that they're fucking.
Not to the extent, like Jade. Obviously, like now that we know that Jade is a cuckoo, she it doesn't really hold as much water. But Jade acts like she didn't have any idea who they were with.
That's so.
Hey, maybe it was more of the dusted Amazon leaves that were blown around.
I'm sure that was it. They just put some of those in the vents and let that process take care of itself.
Yeah, exactly.
So how does this leaf work? Is it like you blow it in someone's face and then you tell them to do something and they just go do it?
Yes. They use the word dusted for the plant or whatever, and I don't know what it means to dust a plant, but I'm assuming it means powderize.
I'm going to bet that it doesn't mean anything, and it's not a real word associated with like botany or herbology, and it's just a thing that they typed in.
whatever. Well, that's how it works. Yeah, you blow it and you're like, hey, go jump off a tower, and then you do in Minecraft. So you mentioned earlier that the tall figure in the cabin in the woods you think is what, the thing that's keeping the real Jade prisoner before it kills and takes her place? Nah, Jade's dead. The thing that kills Jade and takes her place is a normal woman. Oh. Who is just a woman who is not Jade. So what is the thing in the cabin that's like got this creepy silhouette and is described as being like tall and funky looking? I'm assuming it's the not Jade in a weird light. Maybe it was the real Jade burning to death. No, because Jade's been dead for like 2 years. I don't know. Wait, the dead body is just in the cabin, like rotting? Yeah, no, the bird crispy body is just like there. What? There's a dead body in the cabin. Okay, sure. Why not? And I'm assuming the figure in the window was Jade. They might have specifically said it was, but I can think of no other thing that it would be, because Jade is the one evil actor in all of this.
And did they ever explain how Mo knew about something being in the cabin?
No. They never explain how Mo works.
So Mo is never explained at all.
No. My headcanon is that there's no such thing as magic. Mo is a byproduct of her schizophrenia, and she's just very, very intuitive in ways that she doesn't consciously know, because she never says anything that's too crazy or too something that someone would never guess.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting, because there's a part in the first half where she has some offhanded comment to herself about like, oh, I didn't have a father, so maybe Mo is like a psychological version of the father I never had who guides me and tells me what to do.
Yes.
And I thought that was a throwaway remark, but I guess that was the novel telling me outright that Corvina is nuts.
Well, she hears a lot of voices like right before and after Jade dies that say like, oh, I'm finally free. I'm so glad you found me, blah, 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 you know. So, but like there wasn't enough dramatic irony to tell me that this was something that she had come up with ex nihilo and didn't just intuit. Or like if you kill a murderer, of course you're going to imagine the murderer's victims being like, oh, thank you for freeing my spirit or whatever. Like that doesn't solve that paradox of whether ghosts exist conclusively to me.
Yeah. She also hallucinates Toby talking to her after he dies. She like goes up to his dead body that has just fallen from the tower, and she imagines him telling her to give his brother a note, and the note just says "Dance Macabre."
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, is this before or after she learns what the Dance Macabre is from Vad?
It's way after.
So we can't prove that these voices are giving her information that she didn't heretofore know.
Yeah.
Or could guess.
Yeah, it really does seem like they're only giving her information that she already could have known otherwise. Or they're just telling her to go to a place so the plot can continue. They're basically just like a marker on her map telling her to like go to the next location.
The voices are actually RuNyx's, and this is a really clever work of metafiction where the author actively participates in the narrative.
Perfect. Let's call it there. We'll put a pin in it, and that pin will say perfect book.
Well, RuNyx's, I don't know if this has been the most productive episode of the English Club podcast, but this has been the most fun I've had talking about a book in a while. So you have succeeded in the first job of any work of fiction. You have captured my attention and you have entertained me. So hats off to you.
I am glad I only had to read half of this book, if I'm being honest.
Maybe that's why I'm so happy.
I think this one was the hardest for me to get through to date.
Really?
Yeah, there's just... Assuming this wasn't written by an AI, the like weird grammar and the sparse world building just makes me feel like not a lot of like thought or care went into this. Despite the author's note at the beginning, it just feels very like slapdash and I don't know, like it was thrown together in a couple months.
Feels like a hodgepodge, a mishmash. A fakakta nightmare.
It does. And you know what? I think part of it for me was I got this book in the mail and I opened it and there's a castle on the front. And it's got like lightning and like spooky fog and stuff. And I saw through all that and I was like, wait a second. I've been to this castle. So I Googled it and I found the picture that this edited picture on the cover was made after. And this castle is Schloss Hohenzollern in Germany. It's like the former imperial seat. I don't know. And I was just like, oh no, this literally is just like a stock photo of like a real place.
Yeah, it's the dang Hohenzollerns. That sucks.
Yeah.
I just assumed it was a procedurally generated image of Hogwarts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say that this will stick in my mind the way that Empress Teresa has, but I don't know. There's something charming about the unpolished nature of it. It reminds me a lot of stuff I've seen in real life. And I'm going to flatter you to say if you're a robot, you were a well-fed robot. If you were a team of unpaid interns in the vault, you guys collectively probably cared enough. Or if you're a real person, you gave it your all, but probably your corporate overlords who influence culture and use a series of hashtags to determine the things that we want to consume gave you a very, very strict deadline, and you just had to do what you needed to do. But I thought it was really interesting to pick this apart and see all the different ways that the narrative could have gone through Joshua's eyes. And there's a lot here.
This was a really fun way to dissect a book that I otherwise would have really, really struggled to get through the second half of. And I know that I, for one, will never forget Vad Deverell, in part because he's currently knocking on my window, and he's doing that thing where, like, you make a circle with two fingers, and then you, like, stick your pointer finger through it, like, over and over again. And he's, like, batting his eyelashes while he's doing it. So, like, I won't be sleeping tonight, I guess is what I'm saying.
Oh, no, you won't.
But I'll never forget this moment.
Well, I guess in that case, RuNyx, we're going to have to sneak out of the English Club meeting room tonight so that we can see you guys later on around campus.
See you guys around. She saw the pupils in his eyes expand, a black hole consuming the silver, but he didn't say a word. Hopping off the table, straightening to his full height, he kept his gaze steady on her as he'd done during the week. Corvina tilted her head back, her heart battering in her chest, as their bodies communicated in the age-old way. Quicker breaths, blown pupils, flushed skin. She saw his Adam's apple bob as he swallowed, his lips pursed tightly. "Steer clear of me, little crow," he muttered, his eyes piercing, flaying her open. "You might be a luring siren, but I'm no ordinary sailor. I'm a mad pirate, and I'm trying to resist your call. If I land on your shores, I will plunder and take away everything worth having."